For thousands of years, they've just sat there on the horizon, these silent stone mountains that seem to defy time itself. The pyramids of Giza, they're so much more than just tombs. They're this incredible testament to human ambition and engineering on a scale that honestly still just boggles the mind. Okay, let's get into it.
And that right there is the question, isn't it? It's the one that has echoed through the ages. No engines, no steel, no modern computers. So how did a civilization with little more than stone, wood, and rope manage to build the most enduring monuments in history? That's exactly what we're going to break down. First, let's just try to wrap our heads around the timescale we're dealing with. The Great Pyramid, the one built for Pharaoh Khufu, rose up from the desert almost 4,500 years ago. Here's a crazy thought for you. Cleopatra is actually closer in time to us today than she was to the building of the Great Pyramid. Just let that sink in.
Now, to really understand how they pulled off this perfect, iconic shape, we've got to rewind a bit. You see, the pyramid wasn't some sudden flash of genius. It was the result of a long and pretty fascinating evolution in both architecture and what the Egyptians believed.
So, before the pyramids, if you were a prominent Egyptian, you were buried in one of these things, called a mastaba. They were basically these bench-like mounds made of mud brick or stone. They did the job, but they didn't exactly pierce the heavens. Well, that was all about to change.
And here it is, the moment of genius. Around 2630 BCE, Pharaoh Djoser's architect, a guy named Imhotep, had this totally revolutionary idea. He thought, instead of just one mastaba, why don't we stack them? The result? The Step Pyramid at Saqqara, the world's first massive building made of stone. It was a literal stairway to the stars for the king's soul.
The Step Pyramid was a total game changer, for sure. But the ancient engineers, they weren't satisfied. The fourth dynasty became obsessed with the next big challenge. How do you turn that stepped ladder into a true, smooth-sided, perfect pyramid?
What's so cool about this part of the story is it shows that innovation requires failure, a lot of it. Pharaoh Sneferu, who was Khufu's father, was the great experimenter. His first shot at Medum, it was a converted step pyramid, and it collapsed. His second try, the famous bent pyramid, had to change angle halfway up, probably so it wouldn't collapse too. But his third attempt, the red pyramid, that was a triumph. It was the world's first true pyramid, and it became the blueprint for Giza.
Okay, so they had the design down. But that still leaves the unbelievable task of quarrying, moving, and lifting millions of massive stone blocks. For centuries, people came up with all sorts of wild theories. But not long ago, an absolutely stunning discovery gave us a first-hand look at how it all worked.
This is it. This is the smoking gun. It's not a theory, it's a primary source. It's a papyrus logbook, the oldest one ever found, that belonged to an official in charge of a work crew. His name was Mir.
Mir's diary is basically a 4,500-year-old shipping manifest. It lays out day by day exactly how his crew moved the high-quality Tour limestone, those are the casing stones that would have made the pyramid gleam bright white, by boat, down the Nile, and through a series of canals, right to the construction site at Giza.
So, here's the bottom line. They used a mix of incredible organization and really clever physics. The stone for the pyramid's core was quarried right there on site. The special outer stones were brought in by boat, just like Mir's diary says. And moving those huge blocks on land, they used sleds and figured out that if you pour just a little water on the sand in front of the sled, it hardens it and cuts the friction by half. So simple, but absolutely brilliant. The pyramids at Giza really were the absolute peak of this kind of building in Egypt. The pyramids that came later were smaller and not as well built. But the idea of the pyramid was so powerful that it didn't just disappear. It was actually reborn hundreds of years later in a kingdom to the south.
Yeah, this tradition was so strong that it came back. When the Kushite kings from what is now Sudan conquered Egypt, they totally adopted the pyramid building practice. But as you can see here, the Kushite pyramids were very different. They were much smaller, steeper, and built with local stone over 1,000 years after Giza. It's like a fascinating echo of a much, much grander past.
So, we've talked about the how, but that leaves the biggest and deepest question of all. Why? Why this specific shape? And the answer isn't just about architecture. It's cosmic. It goes right to the very heart of what Egyptians believed about life, death, and the universe itself. The pyramid shape was just drenched in symbolism. To them, it was the first mound of earth that rose from the waters of chaos at creation. It was the rays of the sun god Ra turned to stone, physically connecting the earth to the sky. It was engineered to be a kind of resurrection machine, designed to magically launch the pharaoh's soul up to the stars that never set, turning him into an eternal god.
You can see their entire worldview just in this one detail, where they put them. It was no accident. Every single Egyptian pyramid was built on the west bank of the Nile. Why? Because for the Egyptians, the west was where the sun died every single day. So symbolically, it was the land of the dead, the perfect launch pad for the king's journey into the afterlife.
So what are they, really? Tombs? Yes, of course. They were burial monuments on a scale we've never seen before or since, but they were also so much more. They were cosmic engines, instruments of belief, designed to guarantee the life of the king forever, and in doing so, keep the entire universe stable. And maybe that's their greatest secret. They weren't built just to remember a death, they were built to engineer an eternity.